Is there a relationship between anxiety and depression?
There's absolutely a relationship between the two. So 50% of people with major depression experience severe and persistent anxiety. So if you think about anxiety, if you're living in a persistent state of fear or with this sense of a loss of control, that's often a gateway for depression. And the other way around too. With depression, many people have very negative thoughts about themselves and about their lives, about their choices. They live with a lot of guilt. So that's certainly going to cause anxiety. So in essence, the two have a complicated relationship with each other, and they really just feed off of each other and exacerbate one another. So it's important to recognize from a clinical standpoint if there are symptoms of both, and it's necessary to treat both. We really can't treat one without treating the other.
Sure. So in what ways can parental anxiety affect childhood anxiety and vice versa?
So first we have the issue of genetics. So children of parents who have an anxiety disorder are 7 times more likely to also develop anxiety. So there's clearly a genetic component. And then we have the issue of learned behavior. So our children are always watching us, they're always observing us, they're always listening to us. So if you have a parent who has anxiety, they might be modeling unhealthy behaviors or maladaptive coping skills that the child just presumes as normal because that's all that they know. So what that means for the child is that they might start to interpret certain situations as being dangerous or unsafe that in fact may not be dangerous at all. They might start to model coping skills that are maladaptive, such as avoidant behaviors. So rather than dealing with the anxiety or coping through it, they're simply avoiding it because that's what they've watched the parents do for years. If you have parents who, if their anxiety manifests itself in overprotective or over-controlling behaviors, then that can really prohibit the child from developing their own sense of independence, from developing their own coping skills and their own problem-solving strategies because the parent has just been there in an overprotective manner, not allowing the child to develop those essential life skills. From the other side of that, having a child with anxiety, that can certainly impact the parents. What I have seen in the parents that I've worked with, just a lot of heavy emotions associated with that, feeling helpless, feeling fearful about what is life going to look like for my child, a lot of self-blame, a lot of frustration. So that obviously is going to impact the parent and their interactions with the children. Anxiety is also, it's a family issue. If there's a child with anxiety, it's not uncommon for a lot of decisions to start centering around that child. So there might be things that the family is not able to do or events they're not able to participate in because of issues with the child with anxiety. So it ends up affecting the entire family dynamic. So I always say that anxiety and depression are family issues. It's not just about that one person experiencing it.
In our experience as parents, there's probably nothing harder than seeing your child suffer and feeling like you can't do anything about it, whether that's a physical illness or problem, or if it's an emotional, issue or a mental struggle. And of course, it all goes together. What would you say to the parents who feel helpless right now? They have a child dealing with anxiety or depression, maybe some encouragement you could give them.
Sure. Well, the first thing I would tell people is it's okay to have those feelings from time to time. I think we have to give ourselves permission to feel helpless at times, to feel, experience that grief and that frustration. That is okay. What I don't want parents to do is to continually blame themselves or beat themselves up for how did this happen or what didn't I do? Where did I go wrong? And continually going back to that early narrative. And here we go. Here he is.
No.
This is my youngest Noah. We're keeping it real. This is what my daily life, work life looks like now. Thank you.
No worries. No, like I said, that adds to the authenticity of it.
Yes, we're keeping it real, folks. This is life right now.
That's right.
So what I encourage parents to do, rather than staying stuck in that what if or how did it get to this point, rather than staying stuck in those questions, because there's really no, I don't think that that's fruitful. I don't think that that propels us forward. Put that energy into the how-to questions. How do I move forward with getting my child the help that they need? What are some new options I haven't explored? How can I better support myself in this process? So just really channeling that energy that you're putting into these questions, these ruminating questions that don't really produce any fruitful answers, put that into questions that will propel you forward. I also encourage parents practice a lot of self-compassion. And what that means is that learn how to give yourself the same amount of compassion, grace, and understanding that you would give to pretty much anyone else in your life if they were going through the same struggle. Oftentimes we deprive ourselves of the compassion that we would give to anyone else. So be really intentional about practicing self-compassion and acknowledging that you're doing the best you can. The other thing I would recommend is to not be isolated in this process. Don't try to figure this out by yourselves. There is support available on many levels, and we don't have to move through this process. We don't have to navigate this alone. It already feels very lonely and very challenging. And so I encourage parents, reach out to other parents who are in similar situations because they get it. They're not going to judge you. They're not going to chastise you. They're going to listen. They're going to share ideas, and they're going to have compassion for you. So don't make it harder for yourself by trying to navigate it alone.